Hey everybody, it's Frank. Welcome back to the channel. How you guys all doing? It's been a couple days, man. I wanted to come on today. It's funny, I didn't have anything really to talk about the last couple of days. I'm like, what do I want to make a video on? Just doing my thing over here. Been trying to relax quite a bit. I've been mostly successful from that perspective. I'm so relaxed now, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, I got like 3 more days. it's like, it's like I always, right? It's never enough time, but finally, yeah. Anyway, with that said, there's still so many things I want to do. Not gonna get it all done. I knew that, right? But a good chunk of what I wanted to get done, I got done. But at least kind of now I'm like, all right, now I got more awareness. So now I'm like, all right. So now I'm slowly building we'll call it a game plan for the winter, because I won't be able to go outside that much. So there's a lot of things that I want to do, and yeah, it's boring. But if I can't go walking, and if I don't go to the mall, because I go to the mall, sometimes I go to the mall just to walk, like in the wintertime, and that's normally on the weekend, right? It's like during the week, and I got a treadmill. It's boring. Anyway, you're like, get to the point. But come on, you guys miss this stuff, right? Come on, I know you miss it. You're too shy. Let Frank be I'm not shy. Yeah, when Frank's got 2 modes. If Frank ain't talking, that means he's tired, he's done, or he's just like, this ain't worth it. Or he's pissed, or he knows it's like I call it the game is rigged, right? Life is rigged. I know. I'm supposed to be think positive, right? I'm positive the game is rigged. Anyway, so yeah, today the big news, rest in peace, President Jimmy Carter, and give him a give him a moment there. So thank you, President Jimmy Carter. Why do I bring this up? I'm 51, and I was a little kid. He's like the first president I remember, and like a little kid, it was kind of like, I looked at him like I thought he was. This tells you a little. I was probably like 4 or 5. At least this memory that I have of him, my first memory of him. And I swear, I think I told my mom, like, hey, is that Mr. Rogers? He just had that, kind of mild-mannered type of person, right? Never seemed like he was super fun, my mom's like, no, it's President Jimmy Carter, but, a lot of the things that I kind of remember as a kid was just like he was like very soft-spoken. That's kind of how he was, right? I mean, to be honest, like type of guy like him or a man like him, it's definitely a different era, right? I mean, it's like he lived to be 100. Not many people get to live to be that old, right? Imagine that. He probably wasn't quite 101, but right. I mean, he was born in 1924, right? My dad was born in 1932, right? So I mean, these guys, they lived through different things, right? But I just remember that, right? Or I kind of remember like, because the environment, they kind of, it wasn't like how like the Green New Deal or anything like that. It was just like, hey, it was more like awareness. It wasn't like, oh my God, I mean, there was like we didn't put any weight behind those calls of doom, right? But there was a lot of like, hey, these cans are recyclable, right? Like pop bottle cans, like especially like I was living in Michigan, and we had like we still have 10 cent. And I remember as a kid, 10 cents, like in late 70s, that was a lot of money. So you took like two 6-packs. You were getting like the full size candy bars, right? You were getting at least two at least, and a stick of bubble gum, right? So, but yeah, it was like, it was kind of like more awareness, right? And I just remember like, see people like throwing away pop bottles, and I'm like, I'm taking them out. I'm like, there's money, right? They're like, what are you talking about, kid? I'm like, taking them out, right? But yeah, and it's funny too because like the late '70s, that's when like I call it like as a kid, like I kind of was scared, right? Like I mean there was a lot of things to be scared at the time, right? You had Russia, Russia, right? But they had, I think it was '79 that, um, the Middle East and the hijackers and, America looked, we looked really, from a military, we looked kind of weak, right? I mean, prior to Jimmy Carter, right, you had the Nixon crap and the Watergate and, that scandal at the time, it basically just, from an internationally, United States kind of just didn't look good, right? So Carter, at least the way I look at it is he kind of was a transition time, right? But it's actually ironic, and I have a book right here, and I'll get into it a little bit. But all this stuff that comes like decades later, you come and find out like he actually was a decent guy. And when it came to the environment thing, like a lot of environmentalists, they say, oh, we need to do this, right? But they never live up to it, right? They never reduce their carbon footprint, right? But he did. Like he was like, all right, well, we need to put solar in. Well, let's try to experiment, right? Let's try to put some solar panels on the White House. Let's see how that helps, right? And then he actually was like, hey, we should take our thermostats and knock them down. So he actually was like telling them, hey, put it down, right? So he had like a couple layers of sweaters going around the White House, and that's just how he rolled, right? I mean, talk about like I said, no one's perfect, right? But I mean, at least the guy, he actually lived to what he said, right? I mean, like I said, even if I disagreed with the guy, like that's great, right? Like that's who you want as a leader, right? And then bad things happen during. I almost wonder if he was put in there to be a fall guy, right? Like, kind of put him here. But this book, I'll kind of go into it. This is actually called Raven Rock. And it's actually by this person here, Garrett McGrath. But as you guys can see, it says this is the story of the U.S.'s government's secret plan to save itself while the rest of us die. So that's his title. But what's funny is it's not a plan. They have multiple plans. If you don't know, it's a good reading of a book. But Raven Rock is one of the underground, like basically bunkers. And there's a couple of them. They're still in existence. Raven Rock is still there. I think that's the closest one to Washington, D.C. I think you got Crystal Palace. I'm not sure if that's actually up and running. It still exists. I think that's in Colorado. You got Colorado Springs. You got NORAD, right? That's NORAD. That's underground base. But it's called COG, Continuance of Governance. So, basically after World War II, it gives a good description of it. But, right, the planners, especially during the Eisenhower administration, they were like, well, what happens when we have all of our government in D.C., right, and just one nuclear bomb, right, the whole government, you just, coup d'etat, right, you just, like, cut the head right off the government, right? So that's why, if you guys don't know, like, during a State of a Union address, not the entire, there's always someone not there. That's on purpose. But it actually goes into that right here. Like, when they have those things, they plan that shit in, like, months in advance. And it actually goes into, like, who, the order of, like, who, if the president's taken out, right, vice president, right, if you're taken out, you got the head of Congress or whatever, right, and it just goes down, like, during the cabinet, and then all these positions have, like, three backups, and they actually have, like, they go into, like, some of the backups don't even know they're a backup. That's how crazy these plans are. They're like, all right, someone has all these plans, right? But the backup person, they don't even know they're the backup person for the person, right? They'll just find out. They're like, whoa. All of a sudden, like, the Secret Service would come by and be like, yeah. They're like, where am I going? They're like, no, you just follow us. We don't, you're not going to Congress today. So they practice these drills. So Eisenhower, wanted to set all this stuff up. But anyway, there's a lot of good stuff in this. It's a really good book. You're just like, what? Yeah, so, but one of the things is that Eisenhower, he was like, he wanted to have these drills, like, all right, if you had to evacuate Congress. So some of these drills, kind of affected, policy changes and how we set up our continuous of government, right? But it basically goes into how the government could just say, "Oh, there's an emergency," right? That's what's so scary about this stuff, because they can say, "Oh, here's an emergency," right? And basically, it's how the government, right? Oh, it's just temporary, right? And temporary is permanent, right? Then they just suspend the Constitution, yeah, and then there's a continuance of governments, right? And then it's like, oh, it's like they are the government, but they're like a shadow government. And don't get me started. There is a shadow government, like that's the bad deep state part of it, right? But and it's basically like how the government would basically transform in this other unelected body, but it has to do it because nuclear war, right? But there's so many people that actually take this and go, well, the policy doesn't say, right? Like, so if the president accidentally says this, like all of a sudden he's no longer our elected government is no longer in charge. Like it's really weird. But anyway, there was some good drilling, right? And then it kind of got laxed off after Kennedy got, bam, right? And actually, one of the things that was in this book is that Jimmy Carter actually, even though he's not known like a big military, like big in the military, but actually in this book they actually describe, and it looks like this stuff wasn't even declassified for like decades later. But he actually, it'd been like 5 years since these drills up, and he's like, he kind of put a fire in their ass. He's like, what are you guys talking about? You guys are the military. So he finds out all this bad news, like, through the Johnson administration, and Nixon didn't do anything, and it just was just sitting there. So yeah, he was like, all right, we got to get our nuclear deterrence ready, right? We got to get our underground bunkers ready, right? So he had all these programs. Within the first year of his administration, he was in there like tearing all these military guys a new asshole. So again, like, hey, Jimmy Carter, I didn't know about it as a kid, man. Reagan came in there and we were like, yeah, all right, get that guy out of there. He's too weak, right? But it goes to show you, man, some of this stuff we won't know, right? But hey, man, I'm glad that he did that, right? He was the pioneer, right? But you read this book, it's hilarious, like, and he was just like, hey, we got to get our plans ready. We got to do these drills to make sure our plans work, right? And then he's like, told him a timetable, and the military is like, oh no, it's going to take us more than a year. And he's like, no, man, you got 6 months. So like I said, and as the years go by, right? It's actually ironic, right? All the presidents we've had, I'm telling you, like wouldn't it be nice to have a mild-mannered guy in government? I mean, it's like, it's almost like, all right, if we lived in more of a, I don't want to call it utopia, right? Like, but just, like I said, it's almost like, imagine a world, there's no more, crime and violent this, and, people are like neighborly, and like he'd be the perfect president, right? Like, like, hey, hi, neighbor, how you doing? Oh yeah, I got to go to the White House for a couple hours. I'll come back a little bit, right? There's not that much on the table, right? But yeah, I just wanted to get on here to talk a little bit about that, because I remember that as a kid. I kind of remember him being like, I call it Mr. Rogers. And then, the big terror thing happened, and it was out of his hands. He really couldn't do much about it, but because he couldn't do anything about it in the previous administration, right? The international, we looked so weak, right? So I wonder, put my tinfoil hat, it's stuck on there all the time. I think he was put in there to actually do that, to actually have, like, America look stupid, right? Well, hey, man, at least in the background, he was like, hey, we got to get going, right? So, he kind of blazed the path a little bit. Reagan was the more, like, confident, like, hey, man, we got to get in here. We got to, basically call him, he called it out. He was like, it's actually funny, the guy in the background, right? He's like Reagan 2.0, a weirder version. But, the America First thing, just listen to Reagan, Ronald Reagan's speeches. He actually says it. And he comes out and says, put America first. I mean, it's like he just copied a lot of what Reagan had, and to be honest, like it's almost the same kind of setup, right? But that's also another thing, right? Like Reagan ran, right, and Carter just retired, and the guy lived so long. I'm surprised. I'm surprised they never had him come back in '92, right? Yeah, like he Reagan won again in '84. That was oh my lord, and then Bush, Papa Bush, who, gosh, I wish I knew how bad he was back then. But yeah, he's like the evil empire. But yeah, in '92 they had Clinton, right? I guess he was younger, right? But I don't know. I probably would have voted for him because I didn't like Clinton at all. So I voted for Ross Perot at the time. Yeah, if you guys don't know this, like, again, I'm third party. The problem is third party never does anything. Like, the closest was like the Bull Moose Party under Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, this has turned into a political, whatever, YouTube, I don't care. Right? That was the last time the third party actually was really close, and Taft basically was a whatever, he was a jackass. But, yeah, anyway, yeah, there's, if you read into that history, there were some shenanigans. It looks like Teddy Roosevelt should have got the Republican nomination, but he didn't, right? So that's why he made the third party, right? But that basically was a shoo-in so that Woodrow Wilson, Democrat, would actually come in, right? But yeah, Ross Perot came close in '92 and then in '96, so he ran twice. And ever since then, like I said, it's been, I got in the Libertarian Party, and then it was like, oh yeah, so I call it, libertarians have the theory down pat, right? Mostly. There's still stuff I'm just like, yeah, I don't know about that, buddy. Like, that's just a little too Pollyanna, I think is the word. But, but they're a laughing joke. It's like, their best guy is like a cocaine addict or something. Or, I mean, yeah, the other guy, his son is, but, right? But, I mean, they're just like clueless, and they have no bite. It's like they don't know. It's like it looks like, it's like, hey man, get my 10-year-old, kid down the street. He could probably run a better campaign than you, right? So, yeah, it's just, you can't, like I said, you might know, like, hey, your ideological, which box I would fit better. I fit more in there, but to be honest, if you look at it, like, I don't really fit in any of them really well. Hey, story of my life. I don't fit in anywhere, but yeah, so what did you guys think, I mean, it's kind of like, the old guard. I'm not even sure what to call him. He's like the old guard, right? Like, he saw stuff that only, none of us, we just heard in, like, story, it's almost legend now, right? And if you were born in 24, people are saying, you be saying, like I said, I'll be some old guy, right? And I'll say something about 2020, right? And then what's in the book, the history books, they'll say one thing, and I'll be like, no. This is how it happened. They're like, oh, yeah, sure, old man. So I kind of, because that's my running joke, is that I kind of want to live to be like 100. I'm trying to remember how, I think I'll be 126. And there's a reason why, because that would be January 1st of 2100. Or 2101. I'm trying to remember. I want to live to see the 22nd century. But I basically want to be like a living Encyclopedia Britannica. So they'll be like, what's an Encyclopedia Britannica? I'll be like, yeah. Right? But I'll be going around, right? And they'll like have they'll be like, oh, hey, we need to look at the history books. And they'll be like, oh, but there's this old guy. He lived through that. He was, and they'll come to me, right? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. So they'll want to learn, right? And I'll tell them everything, and it's like, again, it goes against, they're like, oh, in this book, or they won't even have book, they'll have a book and go, what is this thing, right? They'll go, oh, this information says that, and I'm like, oh, no, that was during the YouTube era. They lied, and they'll be like, oh, what about this? And I'll be like, no, I lived through it. And they'll be like, yeah, all right. So I kind of want to be that person. It's like, I see the 22nd century. I'm like I'm like carted around like a living encyclopedia. So they keep asking me what happened in history. So I'll tell them how it was, but they won't believe me, right? Not that I'm an old man. Those go, oh, that's not what right? And then they'll keep repeating the same thing, and I'll live to be so old that I'll see it again, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is just like 2020 all over again. But like I said, we gotta live to be 126 or something. So I don't know if I got another 70 years in me, right? We'll see. Unless they change. Wouldn't that be it, right? Like, they find a way to extend your life, right? But you gotta be rich, right? Or no, or like I think it's called In Time. I think it's got Justin Timberlake, yeah, or whatever. It was actually good for its time frame, right? But like everyone didn't age past 25. But when you hit 25, you had this little thing like you had like 1 year left. And basically, they didn't have money, right? The currency or the money was actually time. So the rich, right? They had all this time in the world. And they would like save it on like certain, kind of like the, those Bitcoin, that treasure, right? Those external drives, right? So, but yeah, and then when it runs out, you just die, right? So, or they'll keep us, hey, they'll keep us young, right? But we'll have just enough money to get, just to maintain, right, so that we don't get old and decrepit, but we'll just be like cannon fodder for the corporations, right? This is where my brain goes. I have a lot of good ideas that are kind of crazy, right? And what's funny is there's always truth elements in here, right? So it'd be like, I call it soft disclosure. But right? I could probably make some pretty cool movies, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? You're like, oh yeah, yeah, dude. Just all right. This is a lot longer than I wanted to. I can't remember what else I wanted to talk about, but seeing as now it's over 20 minutes, I think you guys have had enough of me today, right? So anyway, rest in peace again. President Jimmy Carter, they don't make men like you anymore, even though we didn't 100% agree with you. But yeah, see, at least he was. How about this? I'll leave you with one more tinfoil hat thing, and I'll let you guys do your own research. So at least, hey, Mr. President, at least he wasn't. At least you didn't get one of the envelopes at the George H.W. Bush, funeral. All right, you look into it. A whole bunch of people got these envelopes, but he was the only guy. He didn't get one. So it's kind of weird, right? Like, what? Is he too old to get one? You guys look it up. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Hopefully, I don't know. You got anyone watching? Anybody out there? Yeah, I know you're out there. All right, see you guys. Bye.